Hi everyone, in this video we're gonna create an infinite scroller Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies application in here in React. And the main points behind this video is actually learning on how to implement infinite scroller on your application. Of course, we're going to use a RESTful API, you can use a GraphQL API or whatever, but a RESTful API is preferred just to follow along with the video. And of course, we're going to use a third-party React component or React library that allows us to basically use this infinite scroller and just like take it for granted. It's like the simplest and the easiest way possible. So this is the library we're going to be using. It's called the React Infinite Scroller. It's straight to the point. And of course, we're going to use a different API, which is the coin cap in here to grab the cryptocurrencies, the ranked cryptocurrencies with all the details from Bitcoin, Ethereum, whatever. And yeah, we're going to implement that. So that's pretty sweet. If you scroll in here, you get the load in, you wait a little bit, and it does that load in automatically, just like infinitely scroll for you. And you can just go ahead and check out load in. It keeps like doing that and it works. And of course, the API uses pagination. So all of these data are loaded like in a limited way. So they're not loaded in like the full data is loaded then just like on the front end, put in the chunks. Now from the API, there's the pagination works, which means there's an offset and limit working, and it only loads the data that it needs for the next part. So that's the main point between infinite scrolling or why to use infinite scrolling in the first place. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this one. As you see, it works instantaneous. I'm just using some weights in here just to give you that feeling in here. So if you want to just go in and mess with this, remove these hard-coded weights. And of course, you're going to say this instantaneous. So you go down, so you see it's not even noticeable. It just like loads really, really fast without any issues. And it loads really accurately and really good. So hope you guys enjoy this one. Hope you like this application and this project. And of course, you can find this as always on my GitHub like profile. You can find this full repository, the full code at Ipinowis, or you can find it link down in the description below. So hope you guys enjoy, and without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So let's go ahead and get started, and the first thing we need to do is actually install the needed dependencies. And for this, for actually implementing the infinite scroller, we're only going to need a single library that's going to do the job for us. Of course, it is going to be a React library. So the library we're going to be using is called React Infinite Scroller. So it's a pretty reliable library. I've been using it myself. It has almost 3K stars, so it's a pretty good library and pretty straightforward actually. All you need to do is actually install it. It has a pretty simple and easy API to follow and nothing too much complicated to do that. So let's go ahead and install this. I'm going to copy the yarn command and I'm going to just go ahead and paste it in the VS Code terminal in here. Click enter and this should install it on the projects you've got. So after installing this, and by the way in here just a quick note, this project has been initialized and created using Create React App CLI. So if you're wondering how it did that, you can go ahead and Google out CRA or Create React App CLI in Google just to see how you can create a project and set it up like as I did in here in just like a couple of seconds. The CLI is going to do everything for you behind the scenes. So anyhow, let's go ahead and jump into doing this. So after installing this, you're actually good to go. And let me just show you the package.json I've got in here. I've got multiple dependencies installed as well. This is the React Infinite Scroller. Just completely ignore this because this is not needed. I was just testing different ones to see the best. There is style components. I'm using style component 2. And most importantly, I'm using Tailwind. Of course, I am not going to go through the steps of configuring Tailwind with React or Create React App or any of that sort. You can go and Google that out. There is actually a full guide on how to basically integrate Tailwind with Create React App in just like no time. So you can go ahead and Google that out and learn how to do it if you want to use Tailwind. But nonetheless, of course, I'm going to be using Tailwind a little bit because it's much faster, easier, and it's very flexible with its utility classes and everything. So I love to use Tailwind. Anywho, and I'm also using in here Twin macro, which is like an integration between style component and Tailwind to use style component with Tailwind. Pretty simple. So that's basically what you need to do in here, and that's what we're using. And you also want to make sure that you've got actually yarn start in here to start up the project. So everything is good in here. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to be using this, and this is the project we're going to be working on. Now, for currently it has only cryptocurrencies, and of course, clearly see I've already got some, style component, Tailwind components already with the app container and the title in here. Just using this Twin and the style components and the Tailwind CSNs. So that's what I'm going to be using. Now, what is the API we're going to be using? Of course, since you're going to implement an infinite scroller, you need an API, obviously. So I'm pretty sure you've got your own API that you want to do the implementation of. But for me, I'm going to just use a fake RESTful API just to use it for basic stuff in here. Just like to use this RESTful fake data for it, and of course test it and show you guys where it is. So there is this cool API, this cool website called coincap.io, which offers you the most ranks or basically all cryptocurrencies, and it gives you ranks and it gives you markets and it just gives you, of course, real-time exchange data and all that sort of stuff. So you can go in and check it out in here. It's pretty basic, has Bitcoin and everything, and it offers a really neat and awesome API, RESTful API, and it has GraphQL and it has WebSocket. So that's the API in here, that's the documentation, and what we're going to be just needing is actually this assets route. So what the assets route do is actually it's going to give you all the assets. And what I mean by assets is just like a currency or a coin, if you want to say it in like a cryptocurrency. So this is just going to represent a single coin or a single currency. So for assets, it's going to return all the coins. It's going to return this particular list. So what we're going to be doing with this is actually grab the whole list in here, grab like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Cardano, I don't know what that's called. So we grab the full list in here. Of course, we're going to render it as they do it. And it's curious in here, they're not doing infinite scrolling. They're doing actually eager loading, which you have to click and it's going to load you more. It's more like infinite scrolling, but I'm going to just like have this one and I'm going to implement it as an infinite scroller, which means as soon as like I scroll down into the end of the page, it's going to automatically trigger a single or a next loading state. So it's going to do another fetch. Of course, it's going to fetch new coins, like the left coins or whatever is not fetched yet. It's going to fetch it and it's going to add it to the arrays and it's going to like render it on the list right over there. So that's basically what's going to happen behind the scenes. And one more thing is actually you're going to probably need in a lot is actually, which is of course required. So your API has to support pagination. What I mean by pagination is actually you see these two parameters, which allows you to basically control like the amount of data you get and what is the offset. So for example, you can give it, I want to only get 5 assets from the API. I want to limit. For example, the API has like 400 assets, 400 cryptocurrencies. I want to only get the first 5. And the offset in here tells you how many basic assets or how many items you want to offset from the array. So I'm pretty sure most of you are familiar, just like I want to clarify how that stuff works. And of course, you need pagination. Your API must support pagination, otherwise it won't work for you. And for the response or the return data, it's basically like this. It's just like an array and it has different objects, and each object represents a single currency, which is, for example, Bitcoin. It gives you the name, supply, pricing, USD, and all sort of stuff. So that's just a sample of an API. Of course, it depends on how your API works, but it has to support this pagination. There might be another parameters. It shouldn't be, or it just like, it's not necessarily has to be like called limit and offset or those kind of stuff. It could be a different name. It could be like page instead of like the offset in here, because offset is just simply means page, which most people use, or most developers use, or most APIs use that. But anyhow, we're going to use for that. So that's what we're going to be doing right here. So that's what I'm going to be using basically for behind the scenes to grab the data and then actually do the infinite scrolling. So let's go ahead and get back in here. I'm going to get back into my React application in here, and I'm going to grab my projects. And by the way, just let me know in the comments below if you like this way of like developing application instead of like having the whole code editor, then just like switching back and forth between them and having them side by side. So I would love to know your feedback. So just like let me know. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started for this. And the basic one we're going to be doing is actually I'm going to create a components folder, and inside of that I'm going to create coins. So this particular component is going to be responsible for fetching the coins or cryptocurrencies and like rendering them in an infinite scroller. Okay, so that should be really good. Just like to separate the components and everything so you can have a clean code architecture. So let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to have open up first React. So import React from React. And I'm going to do export function coins. So let's for now just do return hello or something, or just like coins or something. Just a string. Doesn't really matter. So that's the components we're going to be rendering. Now let's go ahead and import. Of course, I already put some styles I created some styles like from the side in here, and since we're not focusing on styles in this particular video tutorial, I'm not going to go deeper into this. I'm not going to explain all the styles and create them by hand or from scratch or everything. I'm just going to copy paste them in here. They're just like a simple styles. Of course, said before that I'm using Tailwind, so feel free to manage this, change it, customize it however you would like. You're going to find the repository down below. The link is going to be like my GitHub page at iPinOS, or you can find the link to the repository down in the description below. So that's what we're going to be using here. So this is the coins card. We've got a loading container, a coin item in here, which is represents a single row. This is just a horizontal container, a coin image and a rank and a name, and some info like the price and all sort of stuff. So that should be it for that. That should be pretty basic. I'm gonna just like review the churn in here, and I'm gonna be needing a couple stuff like couple state to just keep in track of and everything. So first I'm gonna do const. I'm gonna do coins and set coins. So Copilot is actually helping me. Thank you, Copilot. And we're gonna have loading and set loading. So for first, loading is gonna be false, and I don't like using React namespace in here. So what we can do, go ahead and import useState. Okay, pretty sweet. So we got loading in here and set loading. What else we're going to be needing is actually has more or not. So for this, I'm going to do has more or set has more, which is another state. And this just basically tells us or tells the infinite scroller components we're going to be using whether there's still some data that we can load or the data has ended and this is the full data we already loaded. So it just like it triggers the next loading or next fetching or not. Just a simple check-in boolean, and that's it. We're also going to be needing something like a total count. Now for the total count in here, what you need to do is actually your API. So let me just put that real quick. For example, I'm going to say a total count is going to be 200 or something, but your API has to return a total count for every single chunk. This is how Pagination works, but for some reason the API in here for this CoinCap API doesn't return that. So unless you use the GraphQL API, which offers that, which has the total counts, but for the rest of the API, for some reason, it doesn't offer that. So that's kind of a problem, but we can actually hardcode this because I already checked the API and how many data there is, like how many coins there are. So for the total count and the total length of a coins array, there is almost like 200. There is more, of course, but I'm just going to limit it to 200. So this tells it how many total counts. So we can later on decide whether we still have to load more data or like the old data has been loaded, so there's no more to load. So we can change this boolean has more to false and just like load no data further than that. So that's basically what it is. And last but not least, we're going to have a page or offset. You can call it whatever. So it's in here, Copilot is telling me this, but I'm just going to keep it consistent. So I'm going to have a set offset, and of course by default it's going to start as a 0 offset. So that should be pretty simple in here. Now I can create another file. This one is going to be common.js, which it's going to have something in common, but I think it's better just to have this inside of this folder. What is that? So I'm going to do constants.js. So it's going to hold all constants variables for us. I'm going to export const. I'm going to have per page, which shows us like how many items or how many coins or how many, like items in general we want to load per page. Let's say I want to load 20 per page, just in the beginning, just to test that out and make sure it works. Okay, so we got per page in here, and that's pretty good. We got everything we need. Now I'm going to create another actually a variable that allows us to check whether there's an empty or we loaded the coins. So this one is empty coins, so not coins, or if coins.length equals 0. So that's going to tell us that coins are empty and we don't have anything there. Okay, so pretty sweet. So that's basically what we got in here, and that should be the simplest part we have. Now we come into the most important part, which is actually where you fetch the data, and this is where the magic happens. So where you fetch the data is actually what you pretty much is going to allow you to set the offset and manage everything and manage pagination, and of course is going to allow you to implement infinite scrolling properly. So let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to do fetch coins. I'm going to have this asynchronous I'm gonna put this as an asynchronous function in here, or a method instead of this component. So we're gonna have this in that particular way. So first I'm gonna do set loading to be true, which is obvious in here. I'm gonna do, so next thing in here, I'm gonna use Axios. So we something forgot about, but of course you can use the regular ES6 fetch method, but I would love to use Axios, which is much better. So to install Axios, to use Axios, if you're not familiar with Axios, it's just like a third-party library that allows you to interact with HTTP and do RESTful, or interact basically with RESTful APIs and do HTTP requests and get responses in no time. So it's an awesome library. So I love to use that library as always. So I'm going to do Axios add or yarn add Axios. This should install your Axios already. So you can get started with this and you can be good to go with that. So let's go ahead and use Axios in here. For this, I'm going to do const response. I'm going to use await and I'm going to call Axios. So it's going to be auto imported for us. So I'm going to do get, and here I'm going to pass then the actual URL for that. So remember, the URL is going to be API coincap.io v2 assets. So this is the API we need to access in here. Now the second object we can pass, which is an options object, so we can pass in the parameters. So what type of parameters we can paste? The parameters in here actually are, you can put search IDs if you want to have a simple or a specific IDs you want to load, specific currency IDs like Bitcoin, Ethereum, or whatever. And obviously the limits and the offset. So what we want to do is actually have a specific limit and offset. So for that, I want to go ahead and render out a specific limit and specific offset. So the limit is going to be representing the number per page. So how many items or how many coins or cryptocurrencies you want to load per page. And this is pretty obvious. So I'm going to import per page variable, which we already created. It's going to import it from our constant in here, which is 20. So we want to get 20 cryptocurrencies per page. So every single time we do this request to the API, we're going to tell him that we want to get a length of data of 20. That's it. That's all we want. Now the offset variable is the most important part in here, which tells it like how many, or basically how many items we want to skip from the beginning of the array. Let's say there is right now in here, there is 200 cryptocurrencies on the API. So if you want to grab all the 200, you can completely ignore these parameters, right? Or we can have the limit to be like 200, whatever. Or the offset set to 0, which means no offset, which is the default offset anyway. Or let's say I want to skip the first 100 cryptocurrencies. Like I want to skip Bitcoin and Ethereum, those first ranked cryptocurrencies, and I want to get only the last 100 of cryptocurrencies from the API. I don't want to just get the first 100. I only want to get the last 100 of those cryptocurrencies, and I want to completely ditch the first ones. So how I want to do this? I set the offset to 100, which means it starts fetching the data from the 100th item on the array. So you can just imagine this as an array of basically 200 items. And of course, if you put 100 as an index, of course, you're going to start from 100 and going forward, up and up and up, and just you're going to get the limits in here, which is per page. So 100, you're going to do 100 plus 20. So you can have 100 plus 20. So it's going to start from 100 and you grab the next 20 items on that particular array, and it's going to return it for you. That's basically what it is. Now, how can we use this in our actually advantage for doing infinite scrolling? It's pretty simple, right? But how can we use that for our particular reason in here for doing infinite scrolling? So the actual trick in here is actually to keep track of the offset. So for the offset in here, we can keep track of the previous offset, and every single time we want to do a request and grab a new data, we can just grab the previous offset, whatever it is, 20, 30, whatever. So we grab the previous one and we do plus per page, which is we keep moving forward because we already grabbed the last one. So we're going to grab another ones, the next 20, and we're going forward and forward and forward. So we can grab the whole items and we can eager load them, and we can have this infinite scrolling working for us. So that's the point in here. So what I want to do, I'm going to create another variable. I'm going to do new offset. And for this new offset, it's going to be basically offset plus per page. That's simple what it is. But to make sure that we start with this, because this is going to be like set every single time, we can just like have it to be working so this way. We can have it this one, and we can just like go ahead into the offset and do minus per page. So it starts from minus 20, and the first time we do this API call, I'm going to do minus 20 plus 20. It's going to be 0, so it's going to start from 0. Then we're going to actually set or update this state to the new offset, so we can set it out later on. Sweet. So we can have new offset set to the limit per page. We already did that, so we're going to grab only 20, and we grab the offset we set in here, and that's it. Pretty simple. Now we can have catch. So if any errors comes through that, I want to catch them, and I want to go ahead and console log, do error, and of course do error at the end. Simple, right? Now let's go ahead and use the response and say if response and response dot data. So if this is a valid thing and everything, what I want to do is actually do something in here. So I'm going to grab const new coins. Now, what I mean by new coins, since right here on the response, we're only going to get that part of data. We're not going to get the full list of coins, right? Which means we already got the first part of the data. Let's say we actually requested the first 100 parts. So I can actually show you that in just like using the Thunder client in here in VS Code, which is pretty sweet. But that's the API how it looks like. So to do that, what I can make is actually, it says there's too many requests from that. I don't know why. But the point, so let's clear in here, there's a limit, which is 10, and the offset is 10. So we're going to get 10 per page, like turn per array, and we're going to start from the 10. Let's say we're going to do offset 0, which is by default, which is those parameters. I'm going to send in here, and there you go. So that's what we got as a result. Let me just like show you that on top. So we start from Bitcoin, which is the first one in the list, and we only get 20 items in that, right? We don't get much more. We only get 10, sorry, because we put the limits on 10, so we get that. So if we put the limits on 20, we get that in a 20. We got the 20 items in like the response in here. So if we go back, there's 19th, and there is the 20 right over here. Sweet. Now if we do the offset by like 10, yeah, just like choosing some rate limiting. So we can do that. It starts from rank 11. So it just like skips the whole first 10 cryptocurrencies, and it started from the first like 11th, and it grabs us the Terra Luna, whatever it is, and it's gonna grab the next 20. So that's basically what's happening here, and that's actually what we are doing behind the scenes in here. So I want to grab the data, and of course the data here that is being returned, it returns inside of an object that has another data which has all the arrays we need. So for that we need to grab the new coins, which of course are the new like data we got in here. We're not gonna get the previous data. So for infinite scrolling, we first get like the first chunk, which is the first 20 items. We grab them, we put them in the state, then we grab the next 20 items. Now we got two different items in this particular scenario. Like here, this response data represents the new items, but the coins array in here represents the previous items, like the last 20, and this one, the next new 20. So how can we do that? We can grab them together and concatenate them into one single array. Then we update the state in here so we can render stuff. So that's basically what it is. So we first render coins, and here we're using ES6 way to concatenate two arrays simply, just like the sprint operator in here. That's what we're doing. And we can do like response.data.data, which is an array itself. Okay, pretty sweet. That's pretty easy enough, right? I don't find any kind of complexity to do that or something. That's pretty straight to the point. Now, I want to do some checking in here. So I want to check if new coins.length equals or greater than. So if this particular array is equals or greater than to the total count, so if it is, what we can do is actually set has more to false. So this way, we got like has more set to false, and we tell the infinite scroller that we don't need actually to load more data because the data has ended and we loaded all of the data. So there isn't much left to load basically. And we just like set has more to false because we already loaded everything. Simple, right? So that's basically the basic checking. That's we needed that. And of course, as I said before, for your API, you need to return the total count for every single request. So remember in here, like for the API, it's for some reason it's not returning that total count, but it should actually return a total count, which is the total count of all of the data that this particular API route should return. For example, there is 400 cryptocurrencies. You should return a total count of 400 cryptocurrencies, so you can use it to do infinite scrolling or pagination or whatever the thing you need it. So like every single request should include that property, but for some reason this API doesn't. So that's why we hard-coded that. If it does, of course, you can just like create a state property for it and update the state every single time, and that's it. Pretty simple. Okay, simple in here. We got the coins. Now, the last thing we need to do is actually call setCoins to update the coins with the new coins. Easy. And the next thing, I might want to like go ahead and do console log just to, you know, debug stuff if anything goes wrong. So I can put coins. And last but not least in here, I can do set the offset, which gonna allow us to update the offset to the new offset. All right, easy peasy. That's pretty simple. And last but not least, we can set loading to false, so there's no more things to load, and we can just like, you know, release everything and say, yay, there's no loading left for us. Sweet. Now we got the fetch method actually ready and everything, so that's pretty sweet for us. Now let's go ahead and start rendering stuff for us the simplest way possible. So I'm going to use the infinite scroller component, which is going to be imported from infinite scroller. I'm going to do infinite scroll from React infinite scroller. So VS Code is smart enough for here, and he got that for us. Okay, so I'm going to just go ahead and do coins card container, which is a card container for all of that. I'm going to have the infinite scroller. I'm going to just like show you this, just see the preview in real time. So we got the infinite scroll. And this is actually the components we're going to be needing, as I said before. Now, the children are going to be like the items we're going to be rendering. All of the coins we're going to be rendering are going to be like the children of this. For the stuff we need on top of there is actually we're going to need the page start, which tells the component like from where we want to start, like the page index we want to start from. And this is just completely optional for our case because we're not using that, because this fetch coins method should have a page in here if we follow how the components works, but we don't want to follow that because sometimes it just triggers some weird stuff. So it's better to control your own states and control how your offset works and your own paging and everything. So that's the better way to do it here. We got another one, which is the load more, and this is actually the function that allows you to load. So if you go in and just like over that, you got a callback for when more items are requested by the user. Page parameters is a new page index. Okay, so we already got that. So it is actually the fetch coins, and it passes you the page parameter, which is the number, which, as I said before, we don't need that for our scenario, of course. The has more in here, so we need just to pass in the has more. And the last thing in here we need to do is actually the loader, which is just like a component or a placeholder that renders whenever it's actually doing the loading stuff. So I can use actually the loading container, which I've created before, and I can say loading 3 dots, and that should be pretty simple. So that's the components in here. It's really that simple. There is another optional prop in here, which is a threshold. Now for the threshold in here, what it is basically the distance in pixels before the end of the items that would trigger a call to load more. So it defaults to 250 in pixels, of course, and you can increase that. I find it to be better increase it, in my case, of course, to 350, but I can actually advise you to go ahead and play around with it. It depends on how your application is styled and the containers and all the sort of stuff. So it just like totally depends on how you actually implementing that in the style wise. So you better play around with this by yourself and you can find out. The next one is actually just offer a custom style. So I want to do width to be 100%. So like to make this infinite scroller div or element take the full width for us, and that's it. Okay, so that should be pretty simple. We got the infinite scroller and everything. Now let's go ahead and render stuff, and we need to render the coins map and everything. So I'm gonna check if it's not empty. So if it's not empty, and I'm gonna use coins, I'm gonna do map, and this is where the magic is gonna happen. So this is where you wanna render your stuff for the infinite scrolling. So infinite scrolling is just basically a container, and this is where it is, just like a wrapper that's gonna handle scrolling and where to fetch and everything. But you have to actually do your rendering inside of that, instead of like as a child. So you can inside of this particular wrapper or this particular container, so you can render stuff inside of it. So that's what we want to do, and we are using actually the map method in here to render the coins that we got. Now for this, I need to go ahead and do the rendering very perfectly. So for that, I'm going to do first coin item. I'm going to have a key as an index, and this is actually our container. So this coin item is going to represent a single row. Like the design is going to be pretty similar to this, so it's going to represent a single row as in this. So that's what's going to happen in there. So this is going to be a single row. Inside of it, it's going to have like a coin rank. And for this, I'm going to have like a simple coin rank in here. I'm going to say coin.rank. The next thing in here, I'm going to have a coin name. And this one is going to represent the coin.name. For this, so it's going to be like either Bitcoin or whatever. So we can save that and see what's actually happening. Right over there. So I need another parentheses in here closed. So let me get back right over here. So let's go to the auth.jsx and render that actually. So I'm going to have coins, auto import, and coins. Okay, so it says TW is not defined. For some reason, I think we haven't imported that. So let's go ahead and have TW from twin macro. Okay, so we got that here. Where is empty icons or coins? Yeah, so yeah, we haven't actually created that variable, so that's the bad thing we did. And is empty coins is not defined again. What is that? Seriously, it should be defined everything. So we got is empty coins here, is empty coins there. Yeah, so that should be pretty good. I'm not sure why this is not rendering. Maybe we need to refetch that or something. But yeah, I think I've totally forgot about one thing, because here if we check on the documentation, it has initial load, which is, I think by default is actually true, but for some reason it's not doing this initial load for us. So we maybe need to force that. So we can do initial load, set to true. So maybe this initial load can happen. I'm going to open up the console in here just to check if any issues going to come up. Alright, so there's nothing in here. Alright, so let's go ahead and do this by ourselves. I'm going to use effects. So as soon as the component is going to actually mount, I'm going to go ahead and do fetch coins. Okay, so we're using use effects in here, which is imported from the React library. So we save that, and there you go. So we got that already. We got this particular one here. I'm gonna refresh. Yeah, so we got everything actually working as we expected, but this doesn't seem to be loading everything. So I'm gonna try to do per page. I'm gonna try to increase that a little bit. I'm gonna try to increase this to 50 actually, and see how it actually does. If any infinite scrolling is gonna work or something. Okay, for some reason, there you go. It returns the data. So it returns all of that. It starts from Bitcoin and everything. But as soon as we reach down there, it doesn't do anything for us. So we shouldn't have actually set the has more in here to true by default. So as soon as it starts, it can actually do the has more, or like when it finishes, when it loads everything, it can set the has more to false, so it doesn't load anything else. Now, as soon as we load the initial stuff, whenever the page is actually loaded, we scroll down. As soon as we scroll down, we get this loading, and it loads super fast. As we get loading, it loads super fast, till it reaches 200, because this is the total count we set. We can change that, of course, but that's actually working pretty sweet. What I can add is actually just something to debug and see that's in action, which is I have in the utils in here, I've got a function which is wait. We're just basically going to wait for a set of amount of time or milliseconds, and here we can actually basically it's going to allow us to delay the API so we can see what's going on. So for example, after the response in here and before finishing everything, so what I can do is actually do a wait. I'm going to wait in here, and this is going to be fetched from, okay, let's go and fetch that or ourselves. So we got wait from, go back to utils and then up. All right, so this is the function. So we can go back in here. We're gonna have wait. So I'm going to say wait 2 seconds, then do that. So this await waits is just basically a promise. That's what it is about it. So just like a simple promise. If you take a look on it, just it returns a promise and resolves after the set amount of milliseconds we provided. Okay, now if I refresh that, we can see that in ActiveScript it takes a little bit of time to load. Now we go down, we get this loading, it just like loads, and there you go, it does infinite scrolling. Now we can go in and like scroll, we got another loading, then we can continue infinite scrolling. In a second, there you go, we got another one, so we can do another loading, and just like wait for it for a couple of seconds, and there you go. It works as charming as it is, and it's just pretty simple. These components makes it work absolutely simple and just like super easy to implement. So it's just one single component. And of course, if you've got multiple components that needs specific infinite scrolling, you can just create like an abstracted component that allows you to do that over and over without like typing the same code again, and it would work perfectly. Screws in here. That was pretty simple. Now let's go ahead and render the stuff that is left for us to do, which is pretty simple. Of course, we got the coin name in here. For example, we got the coin, I think price, or what's the name of that? I think, yeah, it's coin info. So we can render that in here. So we can have coin dot price in USD, but I can actually use number, so I can convert that. So we can do number to fixed, and it can get 2 points after the decimal. Or yeah, seriously, the 2 fixed in here, what it does, just like returns an empty after the fixed point notation, or the decimal points. The next in here, we got another coin info, so let's do that real quick. I'm gonna copy this one. I'm gonna just like put in here, this one is gonna be something like market cap, and which is gonna be like the market cap of the current currency or coin for us. And also I want to render out the actual image. As you see, we got that in here, which is pretty sweet. But I also want to render out the image of this, and I got a tricky way. The API unfortunately doesn't return that, but I got a tricky way by just like going into this, doing open an image, and it uses a specific pattern here, a specific URL. So we only have to replace this with a simple return from the API, and that should work. Okay, so for doing this, let's go ahead and create a function, and this is just a hack around. I can do get coin image URL. So this takes the symbol and returns the string in here. I already got the string over there, so I can go in and copy this one. So that's the string basically we need to return, which is the symbol in here. We need to make the symbol in lowercase and return it. That's it. That's simply what we need in here, and that should actually get us the image icon. So I want to render this, do coin image, and I render this into the src, do get image URL, and it can pass in coin.symbol. Okay, and that should make it work. If we go back in here, there you go, we got the images of that particular coin, and it gets rendered out really well. Now if I refresh this to trigger the infinite scrolling, and we can test it out, I can take this to, make it bigger. Now if you scroll to the 50, we get load in. So infinite scroll is actually working for us in a really good way. We scroll back down, we get that again. Another loading indicator is actually waiting. Okay, let's say our API is bad or our server is actually overloaded, so we have to wait that much of time. Our client is actually facing some issues to load or whatever, or the internet connection is too low or too bad. As you see, as soon as we reach that level, we get load in. So that's pretty instantaneous. It's pretty fast, pretty reliable. I don't find any issues. I've been using this and it works as always as you want it. Now, this one uses the scroll events on the window or the body itself, but of course you can tie this up to the actual elements that you want to use. Maybe if you're using here in the documentation, it gives you different examples. For example, the window scroll events or the DOM scroll events, which is you can use it for a specific element, or you can use a custom parent elements, which you can of course pass in the reference in here to the actual window elements in here, and it should work. Just like having an overflow and height, and it works as simple as that. So it's just basically as the same way we did it in here, just doing this particular style into it. If you want to use it with a custom parent or a custom div element or whatever, that should work for you without any complexities or any issues. So yeah, that's pretty simple. I like this one. It's pretty simple. I don't know what's that. Yeah, sorry, so whatever. But that's actually working absolutely fine, and I love this one. It just works as charming as it is. Loading works. You can have this different way. Of course, you can change the per page in here. The constant you can go to change the per page. But I think 50 items is pretty good. But most of the times you might want to do like something like 30. You know, different items that you can fit in a single page would be absolutely good. Just to have this would be an absolutely good experience. As you see, they scroll a little bit, they get that, and you can of course find everything down there. So pretty simple, pretty easy to implement, and hope you guys actually enjoyed it. So without further ado guys, hope you enjoyed this video tutorial. Hope that was actually a quick thing, just like giving you infinite scrolling right out of the bat, without any complexities or any issues or whatever. And yeah, so thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed this one as you did before, and catch you all hopefully in the next ones.